my dream when I went back to school, my dream was just to get back in the garden and get back to teach, to find a little place I can work out of and maybe teach people some gardening and keep it like that, keep it nice and simple. But the Creator has a bigger dream for me.
Welcome to the Food Garden Life Show. We think that growing and cooking together builds families and builds communities.
Our goal is to inspire and inform with stories and ideas about gardening, food, and people, and we give gardeners permission and confidence to challenge the rules.
Brought to you by Emma and Stephen Biggs. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hey everyone, I'm Emma Biggs, and thank you for hanging out with us today on the Food Garden Life Show. I'm a Gen Z gardener, author, speaker, and blogger, and my passion is growing tomatoes, trying new and unusual crops, and saving seeds. I'm also the author of the kids gardening book, Gardening with Emma, and my co-host here on the show is my dad, Stephen.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Biggs, food gardening guy, horticulturist, author, and horticultural journalist. Today on the podcast, we hang out here in Toronto to speak with Isaac Crosby. Isaac is the urban agriculture lead at Toronto's Evergreen Brickworks. During our chat, Isaac told us that part of wisdom is not keeping it to yourself. And he has wisdom to share with us, wisdom that comes to him through his Ojibwa teachings. Isaac is from the Ojibwa of Anderdon, a small farming community in southwestern Ontario. And he takes the 7 grandfather teachings and explains how we can interpret them when we're gardening. You can find Isaac online on Evergreen Canada's YouTube channel. If you're serious about food gardening, you can get my twice-monthly newsletter on foodgardenlife.com, and when you sign up, you get 2 guides, 20 small-space food gardening hacks, and grow figs where you think you can't in cold climates.
Do you have show ideas, questions, or feedback?
We want to hear what you think. So tell us. If you drop by foodgardenlife.com, you can email us, or you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we hang out under the handle Food Garden Life.
And you can also find me on Instagram as EmmaBiggs_grows, and you can also find me on my website, emmabiggs.ca.
A shout out today to Jody in Burlington, who sent a note to say that she liked the post with a picture of my Nanking cherry bush. Thanks, Jody, and also a shout-out to Gordon in Oklahoma, who sent in his congratulations to Emma for her piece that was in the Malala Fund publication Assembly. And a shout-out to our listeners on Reality Radio 101 who are hanging out with us today. This is year 4 of our live show on Reality Radio 101. It's on the first Wednesday of every month, and now the station is bringing you all of our weekly episodes. Do you like what you hear? Give us a shout out to the studio or directly to me at foodgardenlife.com. There's been such an explosion in interest in growing food over the last year. I've seen some great new gardens, and I've seen a few faltering plastic kit gardens from big box stores. So I decided to pull together edible gardening inspiration from my teachings, presentations, people I've interviewed, books, and articles to make a new online course, and it's called Edible Garden Makeover. It's all about making an edible garden you love. I'd be honored if you want to know more about it, or if you want to tell a friend about it. Registration closes Friday, April the 23rd at midnight, so please do check it out. The website is ediblegardenmakeover.com/buy-now. That's ediblegardenmakeover.com/buy-now. To my listeners today, I do have an apology. I'm not known for my technical brilliance. Emma likes to remind me about the time that I forgot to turn on our recorder for an interview, or the time that the batteries ran out. Well, this time we were using our microphones, however, I had forgot to plug them in. I hope you'll please excuse the tinniness of the recording of Emma and me today, and it won't happen again. And now, here is our chat with Isaac Crosby in Toronto. We love this chat, which wove together gardening, wisdom, and spirituality.
Isaac, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Isaac, I'm really excited you're joining us. I should tell our listeners, it started when Isaac posted a piece on social media that he wrote for Broadview magazine, and it was the 7 grandfather teachings. And I wonder, maybe, can we just start out, give us an overview of what that is?
All right. So the 7 grandfather teachings come from the Anishinaabe people, which I am part of. I'm part of the Ojibwa of Anderdon, so from southwestern Ontario. And these teachings are teachings that we have to keep our, how do I say this? How to keep our people grounded and to walk a nice path, all right? Mm-hmm. So you can think of these teachings as, what the Christians have the 10 commandments. We have the 7 teachings, right? The 7 grandfather teachings. So in the 7 grandfather teachings, you have humility, there's honesty, there's respect, there's bravery, courage, there's love, trust, wisdom. I mean, everything that embodies humans and the human experience here on earth that we need to really look at. But we mostly take these 7 teachings and apply them just to us as humans and how we walk on this earth. But for me, I took the teachings and spun them around and listened to what my grandfather and great-grandfathers taught me about gardening. And I applied the 7 teachings to the gardening aspect, because that's my calling, right? Being an earth helper, being an earth worker. My calling is to make sure to take care of this earth and help save it for the future generations. So taking the seven teachings and turning them into the gardening aspect works out well, because people realize that they haven't really thought about that, but we actually do it naturally. We do this naturally, but we just haven't put it down in writing. And so I took it all and put it down in writing. And I'll tell you this right now, when Broadview magazine asked me to do this, to do the writing, I was like, how do I do this? I'm 49 right now. The last time I wrote was Writer's Craft OAC back in early 1990s. That was the last time I wrote something. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do this? I know what I want to do, but how do I put this down on paper? And then I just woke up one morning and my consciousness must have stuck into the ether, because all of a sudden it just poured out within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations, because it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I want to take a step back for a second. I'm curious to know how you actually found your calling as being a helper of the earth.
Well, it is something how do I say this? I fought against it for the longest time. I have done, in my life, 49 years on this earth, I've done a lot. I mean a lot. From in my 20s doing nothing like entertaining and singing, traveling the world. But everywhere I lived in the world, everywhere I lived within Canada, I always held on to a garden. I always reached back into my farming, my homesteading experience. And I never ever let that go. And then one day when I turned 40, I was like, oh man, I want to go to school. I need to go back to school to work with the earth. How do I do this? How the heck do I do this? So I started looking at things. Didn't want to go back to school and pay the exorbitant amount of money to pay to go back to school. So what I did was I decided to work with someone who was work with Landscape Ontario. And so when I got into a garden position like that, it made me realize that, yes, this is actually my goal. This is what I'm supposed to be doing here on earth, because I've been doing it for so long, just that I kept at the back of my mind and just worried about other things. So when everything happened for me, everything started to fall in place, one after another. And I went, yes, you see, Isaac, a long time ago when you were younger, you thought, oh, I'll go to school for this. And you listen to someone else and said, no, don't go to school for that, when you should have. But I kept it going all through my life. But now look where I'm at, right? I mean, I have so much more to do. I just hit the iceberg of what the things I want to actually do within this world. But it's a lot of fun. I tell everyone, if you get a chance, become an apprentice. That's what I did. It keeps it cheaper. So what I tell people is find someone who's working with Landscape Ontario. So you go with the garden center. After working there for a year, you're eligible to become an apprenticeship to take landscape horticultural technician at Humber. So all of a sudden, your price goes down. If you go for the full thing at school, you're looking at maybe $30,000, $50,000 in debt. Whereas the apprenticeship program, you're just paying $650 a year. This is a 2-year program.
Wow.
And it's an amazing program because you're only in there from January 7th to March 27th. That's it. It's very, very intensive, but it's well worth it. I mean, there's things I learned that I was like, wow, I never knew that. Like, I know stuff from growing up on the farm, growing up indigenous, growing up that way of doing things. I never knew certain things. Like, okay, I love this. I love this.
Wow, that's such a big difference in what you spend to get an education. And
Yes.
I bet there's a lot of people who don't know that. So I'm happy that you mentioned that.
Well, I was just thinking, if you do that, then you have more money to spend on seeds.
Exactly.
More seeds, more plants, more time in the garden.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. And the thing with the program is now a red seal program.
What does
so
that
you have
mean?
your red seal allows you to work across Canada, if not the world. I mean, just graduating from Humber alone, it's going to get you indoors around the world anyways. But just have that red seal it's there.
Okay. Well, so you talked about growing up on the farm. Maybe we could just step back even further, just for a tiny bit. Talk about your influences on the farm and how that has shaped a little bit your approach to gardening today.
Okay. Well, growing up in southwestern Ontario is different than I realized from living up here in Toronto, because our growing seasons are longer down there. And our summers tend to be, they seem a lot hotter, even though they're probably 2 or 3 degrees hotter, but they seem a lot hotter than that. Growing up on a farm showed me that you don't have to use chemicals and all this man-made stuff to grow on your farm. You don't have to go and buy all the chemicals to fertilize your lawn or take care of to get rid of the insects. Your garden does that for you. So being with my grandparents, being with my great-grandparents, and learning all this indigenous agricultural techniques made me realize that, okay, at first, I will say this, at first I was like, maybe I'll never use it in my life. But as life went on, I'm using it now more than ever, right? So going back and using all these old techniques of gardening to make better crops, especially in nowadays, like working at Evergreen Brickworks, if you see the garden behind me, that's my Thrive garden. That's my indigenous agricultural garden, okay? So in that garden bed, I do 2 things. I show you indigenous agricultural techniques. So you have the 3 sisters growing, they're growing in a mound together. I show different versions of the 3 sisters, not just the corn, beans, and squash, because even though those are we call that our superfoods and they're trendy, there's other versions of 3 sisters that we use. One with sunflowers. If we think our soil is contaminated, we plant sunflowers to help decontaminate the soil, right? And then if not doing that, we do sunroot. So sunroot, also known as Jerusalem artichoke. Note here, not from Jerusalem, not an artichoke, part of the sunflower family from North America. We'll put those in the ground if we think our ground is too compact, right? So all these techniques I learned from my grandfather. I learned from being a very, very young one. And then letting it go, because, as you become some teenagers, as we become teenagers, we want to rebel. I'm going to go against the farm. I'm going to go all high tech. Then you realize high tech is way too much money. Yeah. Way too much money. And then you kind of step it back a bit. So learning all that and being around the farm and learning how to use tomato leaves for insecticide. We also had to grow tobacco as well. Learning companion planting and learning about the different species that we need in our gardens, right? And to have in our gardens to make our gardens even better. I mean, not just for the plants, but for the worms, for them. The microbiomes are in the soil as well. Because one thing my grandfather always told me is that if you don't take care of the soil, your crops are going to be horrible. They may look pretty as they get bigger, but they're going to have no nutritional value. So we always make sure we took care of the soil. And by taking care of the soil, that means we used to have cows back then and pigs and chickens. Chickens we had for the longest time. So they would be free range. We let them do what they had to do. We would also go, when we caught our fish, go fishing in Lake Erie, we catch the fish. So you had the fish bones, the fish heads, all that would be inside the garden, as well as the seaweed from Lake Erie. Which is one thing up here, I'm like, wow, guys, we have all this seaweed coming from Lake Ontario, but no one's really using it for anything. Yeah. We'd much rather go to the store and buy the seaweed concoction from the store. And I'm like, yeah, Lake Ontario is right there and it's all free. Trust me, the city probably wants you to get rid of it.
I never thought of that. What a great idea.
Me neither.
Yeah.
It's all the things I learned from my grandparents, right? And I love it because like I said, I'm 49 now. I love the fact that I took that time to learn from my grandfather and my great grandfather. And when I was like 23, 24, 25, I spent those years almost every day going to them and just hanging out and talking. Because I realized that, okay, no one's really coming back to the farm. So my grandparents they're lonely, right?
Yeah.
So going back there and being on the farm and working on the farm with them and just getting my grandfather to, as I say, open up his memory about when he was younger and teach me and to remind him of things that he grew up knowing. And we'd sit in the backyard and just sit there and just laugh and talk about certain things with plants. And I told him, Grandpa, remember the first time I told my grandfather that I want to learn about herbs and medicinal herbs. I was 13 years old. Didn't know a darn thing about any kind of plant, what was out there. It's like, yeah, it's just a plant. It's just a plant. He goes, oh, you want to learn, do you? So within 2 minutes, he goes, let's go outside. What's this plant? What's this plant? What's this plant? And I'm like, it's a plant with a pretty flower on it. He's like, well, I thought you wanted to learn. I said, well, I don't know this. He goes, okay, good. Now I will teach you. So he took the time to teach me about the medicines, to teach me the proper ways of farming, and teach me more in depth about gardening, which I love and I will cherish for the rest of my life. So what I'm trying to do now is that pass this information on. I don't have children, so I'm passing on to everyone I come across. Here, you want to learn this information? Trust me, it'll work better in your garden. You don't want those chemicals. You want to keep it more natural. You don't want to spend too much money on starting your garden. You want to look inside your household, because I can tell people a lot of things in your household can be used to start your garden. You don't have to go spend all this money, then realize you spent too much money and now you're upset with gardening and the plants and you don't want to garden next year. Nah, everything's inside your home. Start small, start easy. You can do this. And all that stuff, like I said, I learned from my grandparents.
Wow, that's great. So you learned to garden without the consumerism from your grandparents and all of those traditional teachings.
Yes, which is great, because when I would go to the stores and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, how much does that cost? Okay, so you just paid for the packaging, right? But like, oh wow, so yeah, so these certain things in your household will become your best friends when you're gardening.
Well, can we jump into the 7 techniques? Because I think we should start with humility.
Oh, humility. Okay. So for me, when I'm doing my humility, so pull it up here. So, like I said, the 7 grandfather teachings, Anishinaabe teachings for the people, for everyone to stay humble, to stay human and not get bigger than who we are, right? So first one I started off with in my poem was humility. So the humility within the poem says, your work is to assist the earth in rejuvenating and by helping feed the animals. We are not to think of ourselves as better than the earth, but mere caretakers that listen and put her needs before our own. We have become so used to putting our needs first, but now we're at the point where, geez, the earth is crying out. And now scientists are telling us, you only have 10, 12 years before we reach the point of no return, right? Guess what? We have work to do.
Another one of the 7 grandfather teachings that you've woven into gardening is honesty. And maybe can you read from the poem what you've said about honesty and tell us about that?
I sure can. So within the poem, honesty is, we are to be honest to ourselves as we care for the earth. Honesty in gardening means to speak the truth about how we garden and not letting our egos control. When we are honest about our approach to gardening, we stay focused on what is being asked from us as earth workers. So speak the truth about your gardening. And speak the truth about how you garden. Don't lie about it. If you made a mistake and happened to use chemicals in your garden, just say, hey, I happen to use chemicals in this one certain part of my garden. I thought I was doing something right. It came out that it was actually wrong for my garden. So I went back and started using more natural techniques, right? Be truthful about your garden. Some people, when we're gardening, we have these big expectations. We take on way too much. And so we're like, oh, well, I'm going to do this and do that and do this. And guess what? It doesn't really work out. Or maybe you don't do that. Be truthful. Be truthful with who you are. Be truthful with how you're going to garden. Because when you're truthful and you have that energy, nothing but greatness is going to come out of it.
I really like that one too because I know I've done many of those things. I know it really helps to be honest about your mistakes in the garden because then you can learn from them the next year and get better, but then everyone else who sees what you've done wrong can too. So I think that's a good one.
Yep. We have to, as I tell my nephews and my nieces, that don't be afraid to make mistakes because that's where you learn. In that
Yeah.
mistakes is where you learn. If you're not making mistakes, it means you're too comfortable and you're not learning anything. We're here to learn.
And that makes me think when I do gardening talks, I've started to weave in some of my mistakes, especially the funny ones. And it seems to be an empowering thing for people. They like to hear that everyone is human and everyone can make mistakes. So that honesty really, yeah, that's so powerful.
You have to tell the truth about your mistakes. Don't try to make it look so perfect. I tell my mistakes all the time when I'm with my volunteers because I make mistakes. Gardening is not 100%. It's not. We wish it to be 100%, but guess what? Some of our crops don't work. Some of the plants don't live. Something happens along the line. So it happened. We said, okay, I did this wrong. Own up to it. Keep going, moving forward, because guess what? Next year, you'll know better.
So next up, we have respect.
Respect. RESPECT.
Woohoo! Yeah.
So respect. We must always respect the earth upon which we walk. We do this by how we care for her and the animals that frequent our gardens. Always care for the animals. We have to remember that. Those are her babies as well. Take time to be with the earth. Feel the energies and then attune your energies together. It will help build the respect. When you realize that we all get our food from the earth, you will then realize that you must respect her and the soil we grow on. And respect is key because we haven't respected the earth for a long time. I mean, I will say it, everyone across the board, because we bought into consumerism. We bought into using plastic all the time. We bought into certain things that we know for a fact do not benefit the earth and have no respect for her. And we have to respect the earth and how we garden. Are we going to go garden and just go there and just tear everything up like all the big farms do? Or are we respectful and say, you know what, I'll just take this certain portion over here for this year and maybe work with that first and see what happens there. And when you do that, what you're going to do is, for me, is look at how you're going to respect the area you are in. Am I going to plant crops that are just going to take all the nutrients out of the earth? Or am I going to start planting crops that actually bring something back into the earth? Right? So looking at your nitrogen fixating crops. What are we giving back instead of just taking from her? How are we going to respect her if all we do is take and don't give back? How are we going to respect her if we don't respect her animals, her babies, her plant babies? How do we respect if we don't do that? So we must respect her, because if we don't respect her, do you think we respect ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, I think as gardeners, we think a lot about what can we get out of the garden. Well, I can get a fresh cob of corn for myself and a beautiful bouquet of flowers, but how can you give back as well?
How can we be stewards? Yeah.
Yes, because we have to be stewards. We have a responsibility to this earth, whether we like it or not. Because guess what? There's only one that we so far can live on that we know of. And when this goes, where do we go? All right, where do we go?
Okay, Isaac, another one of the 7 grandfather teachings that you've touched on is bravery and courage. And I love this because I've never knit together bravery and courage with gardening, other than maybe when I'm tasting a hot pepper. So can you tell us about that?
Good one. Okay, so bravery and courage in the poem says, there are times in gardening that we must be brave and carefully relocating wildlife or administrating gardening techniques that may not be popular. Okay. Also, with this teaching, we are to be brave and have courage to stand up and protect the earth against those who want to destroy her for capital. So within this one, when I talk about being brave within your gardening techniques, that means not using the chemicals. Go back to some old-fashioned techniques. If you have a chance, go back to putting fish heads in your gardens, or the last part of the fish inside your gardens. Go back to putting seaweed in your garden, right? Go back to those old-fashioned techniques that actually work and benefit and put stuff back in the garden for us. That's the bravery that I'm talking about. The bravery to stand up and say, you know what? I'm not using chemicals. I'm not using Roundup today. Why do I want Roundup? What am I rounding up? I'm rounding up nothing, right? I'm going to start doing this. I'm going back. I'll start using Epsom salts in my garden. I'll start doing cinnamon in my garden. I'll go back to the techniques that have little to no dire effects on the earth herself. So that's bravery. Because some people, they're not brave that way. But I'm going to follow the crowd and use the Roundup. I'm going to follow the crowd and use these chemical fertilizers, actually burning my plants, burning the earth, instead of using a natural chemical, instead of having compost tea or vermicompost tea, right? And also talk about being brave and relocating the animals and how you take care of them. With that, it means, for me, there was a time at Brickworks, where it's my second time in the garden, where I had an influx of rabbits. I love rabbits. They're nice and furry and cute and stuff like that. But I'm not a fan of having rabbits in my garden. That's just the way it works. So every year, I'd always make sure I put a portion of my garden, okay, I'll fence it off, so I'll make the fence open so you can actually come in, get your stuff, and get out, right? But they don't want that. They want everything on the other side of the fence, which is in my garden. So I laugh, like, hey, that's great, that's great. I'm not going to hurt you. If by chance you come out in the garden and there happens to be a big hawk flying around, be careful, right? So doing stuff like that, where I'm not going to put down a trap. I can't do that. I will keep my plants going, but if you happen to, as a rabbit comes out and gets taken care of by a hawk, that happens. And guess what? One day I saw that happen. I was like, oh, well, this is Mother Nature. There's nothing I can do about it. This is the circle of life, right? So just being brave, and being brave to talk to animals as a gardener, and talk to your plants as a gardener. That's brave, because some people don't.
And you're showing courage or bravery to garden then in that way that feels right to you.
Yes. That's a really good one. That feels right to you.
Okay, and then the next one that we have is love.
Love, amor. Okay, so love. In this teaching, we are to see and experience the love of all sentient beings on Earth, from the millions of microbial life to plants, to animals, to us, the humans, right? So we have to feel this love for all of us. In gardening, love is what is needed to toil the soil. It's needed to plan for the season. We need love in our gardens so that the plants can feel it and do their best to grow healthy and strong. Especially during these times, do we ever need love in our gardens and on Earth? We need love. Love. We cannot live without it. If you don't have love in your garden, you don't have love for gardening, I always have one question. Why are you gardening if you don't have the love? Because you, as far as I'm concerned, you can't be negative in a garden. Because I can be negative for a quick minute before I walk in the garden, before love takes over and positivity takes over. But if you can be negative in garden for an hour or two, I'm like, wow, take a step back, find the love. You're missing it somewhere. See the love that you're growing. Because when you're growing these plants and growing these and starting these seeds, that's love. So if you can garden without love, I'm scared of you. I'm like, wow, that's some next level Darth Vader gardening to me, because I can't do that. I can't do that.
And as you're talking about that too, I am picturing people I've talked with over the years who feel sometimes this resentment for gardening, and if you could change that viewpoint, as you say, to feel that love, how wonderful is that?
And it's so wonderful. I had a friend of mine who would come down to the garden and would try to complain all the time. I went, you know what? I'm gonna keep inviting you back, because I know that love is in you somewhere, because I know you like being outside. This gardening thing, I know you like it. I know you will, because you love to eat. Oh, I don't love hearing the birds chirp. I don't want to see the worms. I don't want to do the bugs. I don't want to do this. I'm like, wow. So do you like life? I do. Do you see all those birds singing? Do you see the plants? Do you see the things growing? That's life. If you like life, then you need to like life. You need to like their life as well, because they're just as beneficial as you are. And slowly, he's starting to change his ideas. The other day, we were just walking by and he's like, oh, listen to the birds sing. I'm like, you're listening to the birds sing now. Love it.
And that touches on something else too. As gardeners, we have this opportunity to change the way that people view the world.
Yes.
Powerful.
Yes. Yes. And we must step on that soapbox and change that world. If that means getting people into the garden to try the fresh produce that they only get at the grocery store, that means that. That's one thing I love to do with people. It's have them come to the garden and say, hey, try this. Try this. Have you tried this before? Try this. Try this cucumber melon. Try this traveling tomato that I got from over here. Try this over here. And things are different. And they always go, wow, this tastes so much better than going at the grocery store. Being a gardener, being people like us, so we need to step to the forefront and say, try fresh produce. Try fresh produce that has been picked in the past couple hours. Not fresh produce that has picked last week and sat in a truck, in the refrigerated truck, and so you can buy it this week. That's not fresh. Because one thing is like broccoli, for instance. When I am planting broccoli with children, they will eat the broccoli when it's freshly picked because it's sweeter. Broccoli from the store is bitter. And the parents are like, my kids don't eat broccoli at home. So yeah, because it's bitter. Grow your own. You'll like it even better.
Okay, we have one more, and that one is truth.
Truth. So truth can go back to humility and honesty. So when you're in your garden, like I said, you always speak your truth about your plans, speak the truth about your experience. So if your compost failed that year, tell people my compost failed. It stinks, right? Just be truthful. You'll work it better next year. So speak truth in your garden and about yourself. See the truth in your actions and feel the truth when you are in your gardens. So feel your gardens. Feel what's going on there. Feel the truth that they are actually giving to you. Because guess what? Plants can't lie to us. They're doing what they're supposed to do. It's us two-leggeds, us humans, that have this ability to not speak the truth about our plants, about our gardens. When you're truthful with your garden will be truthful to you. So be truthful in everything you do. Just speak the truth. Walk that truth path. You made a mistake. You made a mistake.
Isaac, that's really wonderful. The 7 grandfather teachings from your Ojibwe traditions, but applied to gardening.
I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
You missed one, the wisdom one.
Oh gosh. Let's jump.
Bravery and courage are slashed together.
Yes. Let's get wisdom. Okay.
You need the wisdom. All this together.
I need wisdom.
Me too. Wisdom. We become wise in all of our gardening experience. So all the experience you have in your gardening, your wisdom should come in. So that means don't lie, tell the truth, and laugh at your mistakes. It helps us to know how to care for the soil and the plants. It is in our years of hard work and dedication to caring for the earth that we become knowledgeable and wise. Because that's what it is. When you take that time to go from a beginner of just learning how to take care of the earth, just learning about your part, your responsibility on this earth, you don't really have any wisdom because you're just learning. You're looking for other people to teach you. You're looking for the wise ones to teach you, right? And then as you get older in your gardening experience, the wisdom comes. And wisdom will come with or without help from wise ones. Your wisdom can come from learning from your mistakes and acknowledging your mistakes. Thus, your wisdom comes from the next year, right? And so keeping that wisdom within the garden doesn't mean to be cocky. It doesn't mean to be arrogant. It just means to be wise enough to know when to say something and when not to say something. When to garden a certain technique and when not to garden a certain technique. It's the wisdom to know how to garden and not how to garden and how to do it. I mean, I think of wisdom when I look at myself, like, wow, am I wise? Sometimes I'm like, I think I know some things. I'm not 100%. Only Mother Earth, only that creator being, whatever God people believe in, that is 100%. Me, I'm more like 60-40, I guess. I'm more way down there because I make my mistakes. I'm still human. But as time goes on, you realize that, I do know a few things. And with those few things, you pass them on because part of wisdom is not keeping it to yourself. That when I meet people who are wise and don't want to give up the information, to me, I'm like, then you are not wise. you are a hoarder, you're keeping in you're selfish, keeping everything to yourself, because that wisdom needs to be spread out there within the world, so the world and the people can change and benefit themselves and the earth.
And that makes me think back to what you said about your grandparents and them sharing their wisdom with you.
Mm-hmm. You have to, my volunteers at Evergreen Brickworks, I share every amount of wisdom that I have with them. I don't keep what I have inside, because I need that to come out for this earth to be better, to take care of this earth. Because everyone knows I love gardening, I love plants, I love the earth. I just want to make sure that people are doing it well enough that we're not harming her too much.
Well, the wisdom maybe is a nice segue into what we haven't even asked you yet about what you do at Evergreen Brickworks and inspiring gardeners, inspiring kids. Let's dig into that a bit.
All right. Well, I have been at Brickworks 4.5 years. It has been amazing, because at Brickworks, what I do, I am the lead in the land-based Indigenous programming. So there's a heavy Indigenous programming there, I should say, partly due because of the team that I'm on. We pushed for it. I was part of a team with INAC. So we had, for 3 years, we received funding from INAC to help re-indigenize Brickworks. So we came with a plan. It was food, medicine, and ceremony. The first one focusing on Indigenous agricultural techniques in our food. How we grow our food, how we take care of our food, how we take care of the seeds. And then we went for our next one, which was medicine, how our food is our medicine, how we work that into the whole program there at Brickworks. And then the next one was ceremonies. Now at Brickworks, we have a sweat lodge on site. There's teepees on site. We're getting a wigwam on site. So now we're doing Indigenous ceremonies on site at Brickworks. So doing that was my first phase. My next phase of this, because now the 3 years is done, is I call it INAC 2.0, whereas I'm now in the process of getting 5 sites around the city of Toronto. One north, Brickworks is going to be the center, it's going to be the center of it. 4 that shoot off of it. These gardens are gardens that are going to be primarily for the Indigenous elders that need the fresh produce, because I found last year, when the beginning of the pandemic, the Indigenous elders seem to be left out on a lot of the food. So at the last minute, there's a lot of scrambling of, we got to get this. So part of my 2.0 with INAC is to get these gardens started, have the gardens growing, and get this food back into the Indigenous community, and not just stay with the Indigenous community, but I'm going to start there first and then broaden it out. Because with Indigenous people, we take care of everybody, make sure everyone's taken care of. So doing that, I'm now doing a project with my first garden is going to be at the University of Toronto farm. Also there, I'm part of they took my dream, which I love because I'm trying to figure out who can do it for me, planting 200 pawpaw trees at the farm.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Those coming. I tell people, I'm a pawpaw pusher. Shh. I push pawpaws.
Okay, confession, so we've got 4 of those in the yard here.
Nice. Yeah. I love it. See? I want Toronto to become the unofficial pawpaw place. We should have a pawpaw festival. I keep trying to get them to have pawpaw trees in the ravine. Let's do something with the ravine. That's my next goal. Gardens in a ravine. Right? So at Brickworks, I do all the Indigenous programming, Indigenous agricultural techniques. I work with the Indigenous youth. This summer, I have 7 Indigenous youth that I am mentoring on urban agriculture. Did that last year. So this year they're coming back, which is great. Working with Council Fire, Wandering Spirit School, NLC, and doing a lot of videos lately, which is fun. I love the videos. I'm having fun with it, right?
So where can people find the videos to watch?
Okay, so if you go to YouTube and put in Brother Nature, that's also my handle at Brickworks. I call myself B Nature, which stands for Brother Nature.
Okay.
Evergreen Brickworks, they have my videos on there as well. Evergreen Brickworks actually took my videos and polished them up and made them look professional. And I was like, what? This looks good, okay. Because I'm just doing some nice homemade stuff and I'm keeping it down to earth. If you want to make it look professional, go right ahead. Go right ahead. There are CBC, if you go to Fresh Air, CBC, the archive, I started doing that again this year. So I'm back on doing that. I will say this, my dream, when I went back to school, my dream was just to get back in the garden and get back to teach, to find a little place I can work out of and maybe teach people some gardening and keep it like that, keep it nice and simple. But the Creator has a bigger dream for me. And all my little sub dreams are now becoming these big dreams, actually coming forward, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep going with this and go where I gotta go with it and keep doing gardening and keep teaching and keep mentoring people and make sure that people are doing what they can to take care of this earth. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun journey. I have 60 more years to go.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you are doing a lot. That's pretty awesome.
I'm thinking of all the people you're inspiring.
All the people that are inspiring me. That's what I like to look at it. Like I said, I'm just doing my part. Doing my part and speaking my truth. That's all you can do. And enjoy it. I mean, if I did not enjoy this, I would not be doing this at all. Because then I'll be, oh my goodness, now I'm too much like an adult. Now all I'm doing is let me go play in the soil. Let me get all mucky.
Yeah.
Isaac, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and sharing the 7 grandfather teachings and just all the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. All the amazing work you guys are doing. Come on now.
Hey, thanks, Isaac.
You're doing phenomenal work.
Thank you.
I love this. You got a book and tomato seeds? Come on now, Emma. Come on, stand in your light. Stand in your light. You know you're good at this. You're going to be way better. And seeing you do this and being the young age that you are, keep going. Keep going. You can make a lot of change.
Yeah, I hope to. So let's work together and get that Pawpaw Festival together.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Because guess what? You guys ever tried Pawpaw Gelato?
Oh.
No.
Tell us.
That sounds so good.
I had some made because last year at Evergreen Brickworks, we had a Pawpaw Tasting Festival 2 years ago. And one of the guys, Paul DeCampo, goes, I'll get some gelato made. Oh my goodness. Pawpaw Gelato? Yeah. You don't want to share with no one at all. Sorry. That's when you're greedy. You're like, no, all mine. Get away. Get away.
So you and me have to hang out and eat Pawpaw Gelato, but we can't invite him because then we need more for ourselves.
Yep. All for us.
Wait a minute. Do you remember that teaching love, Emma? You got to share that Pawpaw Gelato with me.
Oh, I don't know if Pawpaw Gelato falls into that category.
Give him a tablespoon. Say, I love you so much. Here's your tablespoon. Okay, you're done.
Good plan.
I love it. Isaac, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
That was our chat with Isaac Crosby in Toronto. Isaac is the urban agriculture lead at Toronto's Evergreen Brickworks, and the website for Evergreen Brickworks is evergreen.ca/evergreen-brick-works. What did you think? Are there some of the 7 grandfather teachings that you can weave into your way of gardening? I was also struck by the way that Isaac helps people to garden without consumerism. Why buy what we already have? And, of course, as Isaac talked about a Toronto Pawpaw Festival, I was drooling. If this episode piqued your interest in making change through gardens, see the episode Urban Farming to Grow Social Change from July 2020, where Jesse and Misha from Zawadi Farm in Toronto join us to talk about their journey into growing food and using food and farming as a tool for social change. As we wrap up today's episode, I'm remembering some magical outings when I took my mom and my then 3 little kids to Evergreen Brickworks to explore some of the old buildings, to climb hills for a fantastic lookout of the city of Toronto, and just to look at minnows in the ponds. The podcast is back next Thursday. Julia Demacos from Mono, Ontario tells us how she went from having never gardened to having a 7,000 square foot kitchen garden and teaching others how to garden.
You can listen to past episodes of the Food Garden Life podcast on foodgardenlife.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
You're listening to the Food Garden Life Show. I'm Stephen Biggs.
And I'm Emma Biggs. Thanks for tuning in.